Hello, venue owners. Welcome to the fourth episode of the Venue Insights podcast. I'm here with Shannon Tarrant. Shannon is one of the top pros in the venue industry, especially when it comes to all things sales and running effective tours, which we're going to be getting into today. Shannon is also a leading wedding business coach, founder of the Wedding Venue Map, a searchable database of Central Florida venues and vendors, and the chief helper at Venue Help Desk, which is a resource and coaching program for venue owners. So Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today.
So excited to be here, William, and help you and all the venues out there.
Awesome. So today we're going to be switching up the format a little bit. We're going to be diving into sales, specifically how to run your tours in a way that maximizes conversions. So we'll cover the pre-tour follow-ups, what should happen directly after a tour is booked, and then go over the most effective strategies for the tour itself and the post-tour follow-up. But first, we're going to do a little background on you, Shannon, to introduce you to the audience. So Shannon, how did you get into the wedding industry? And can you give us a brief history on your businesses?
Yeah, I've spent my entire career, just about 20 years. Makes me sound like I've been doing this a long time. Specifically in the wedding industry here in Central Florida. I started my career in offsite catering, which gave me that opportunity to be able to jump in and out of venues all over town. Then spent 5 years at a local family-owned golf resort style venue, building, developing their wedding program into a local powerhouse, doing 150 weddings a year. And then the long story short was I just got sick of brides. I got sick of the couples. I got sick of all the wedding stuff and was really passionate about helping businesses with their marketing. And Wedding Venue Map was launched 9 years ago. And so think a hyper-local directory really focused on getting venues quality leads, not quantity, with a really deep filter functionality where the couples can really filter all of the things they're looking for to find the venues that match their criteria. So I spend so much time in my all the time role living in this funky space in between today's couples planning their weddings and all of the venue businesses, and realized that there was just such a huge gap in the learning of being able to bring, those frustrations that the couples were feeling directly to the venues on how they could grow and improve. And Venue Help Desk was born out of that.
Oh, that's awesome. And so Wedding Venue Map, that is essentially a directory for wedding venues and vendors for brides and grooms to connect with venues and vendors. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So it's just a hyper localized directory. So rather than it being national on a huge scale, we're only based in the Central Florida region. We kind of go coast to coast across Central Florida. But yeah, it's a place where couples spend a lot of time searching for their venue, and they find some vendors along the way also.
That's awesome. And can you tell us a little bit more about Venue Help Desk? Like what type of pain points does it solve for wedding venue owners?
Sure, there's a few different ways that the venues will reach out to us for support. One of the most common frustrations in general is there's so many amazing companies and businesses out there that can help you fill your sales funnel, like Wedding Venue Map, but there isn't always that education on how to convert it. And so we really focus on all of the tools and tools and templates and education and learning and courses. That's that space in between how to manage the leads once they come in, how to convert the leads to a tour, getting those tours to book or disqualify themselves without ghosting you. So we really kind of focus on that sales process and help connect you to really high quality vetted helpers and companies that can support the other processes that venues need to work on.
Awesome. And I always like to ask this question just because entrepreneurship is hard. It's challenging to run a venue. So when you were first starting out in the wedding venue industry, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when starting, and how did you overcome those?
When I started, I wasn't the owner, so I'm a little bit different. Like I started in venues as the employee. So I'll give you a little bit different of perspective than most of the people that William is probably going to interview. And I think that as the employee who came in, my biggest challenge to overcome was getting ownership, being willing to make changes. They were very set in the ways of this is what's worked in the past or this is what, but in the world of weddings, I was young and fresh and hungry, and I was so much younger than everyone else who had worked there. So I had a different perspective of my own generation. And so my like biggest challenge was getting them on board to listen to me, hear me, and be willing to try new things and test them. And I could pull data and track it all to show them it was working. But that was like the biggest frustration was getting them to hear me. So I honestly just stopped asking permission and I just started doing stuff, but I did it with tracking behind me. So I had data to prove that it was working. So I just overcame it by asking for forgiveness and not for permission.
Yeah. And can you give us like what are some examples of some, different items that venue owners are, could be a little bit stuck in their ways about doing or about changing? Can you give us some examples of that?
Yeah, I think the marketing was the biggest piece, like the photos and the choices of images that they were using at the venue. I don't think were attracting the ideal client that they actually wanted to have there. They weren't the what I would have considered the best photos that they had of the space. So I think image selection was a huge problem. Their lack of constant motivation in terms of social media. Obviously, this was a little while ago, but same problems exist today of really putting the time and energy and effort into social media as a marketing platform. And I think those two were probably the biggest fixes that we were able to make small changes with huge impact.
And that kind of, relates to, booking tours and obviously getting the right prospects to come in through your doors, especially when it comes to image selection. So can you give us an example of types of images that you see are the most effective at bringing in the right prospects?
Yeah, this is hot topic in the world today. This is one of my, this year's I'm gonna die on the hill. So there's a few things that the couples themselves with our team at Wedding Venue Map, they're constantly yelling it from the rooftop. They're really hyper focused on being able to see your space. The venues are doing such a great job of posting these emotional moments from weddings that have the couple and they're so in love. And they're posting all of these either pictures of that or photos of the detail, and they're lacking in pictures of what the space actually looks like. So I think making sure that you're doing a good mix of utilizing just the empty ceremony space with like chairs, decor, what it looks like, your empty reception room fully dressed, like making sure you're showing the space as well as showing, the moments and the memories and the emotion.
Right. So showing the space so the brides and grooms can actually envision, their ideas and what they could do with the space without actually showing, the venue already set up with the brides and grooms at the altar and everything like that.
Yeah, just giving them room. When you look at the average venue's Instagram, I participate in about 25 wedding shows a year personally, like me standing there talking to the couples, because this is how I get the data to be able to help, other people. And even sometimes when we know the perfect venue that matches all their criteria, we go to open the Instagram and I'm like, scroll, 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 scroll. Like I can't just, I'm like, hold on, I'm trying to find their ceremony site. Like pin a post to the top that's here's our ceremony site, reception space, like put that data because otherwise they're seeing the dream of like the emotion, but you're maybe not qualifying them. That lead might come in, but they're not going to book the tour.
Right. And they might not like the current setup of the the pictures of your that you're showing. So yeah, I think that could help a lot to have a pin post or a pin video to show the
Yeah.
space without the full setup. Okay, so let's go into the pre-tour phase. So what are you supposed to do after a tour is booked before the actual tour? So what's one thing most venues just don't do after a tour is booked that you think makes a massive difference in tour quality and overall tour performance?
I think part of the problem is the tour booking process itself, right? When a tour comes in, it's coming through one of a few different ways. You're either using an online tour booking system, which, mwah, chef's kiss. If you're using an automated system where they can see on the calendar, book the tour, that's incredible. But if you're not doing that and you're still going back and forth, all of that is okay. At the end of the day, one of the most epic fails is that they're not asking enough of the right questions to be able to qualify. We've all heard 1,000 times over that when a lead comes in, we can only ask so many fields on a lead gen form because they won't fill it out. But at the point at which someone is making a commitment to get into a vehicle and drive to your venue and give of their time, you can qualify a little bit harder. So if you're doing an online automated tour booker, whether it's through your CRM, something like Calendly, any of that stuff, you can ask a little bit more detailed questions on the front side so that you're more prepared going into the tour.
Got it. So what are some examples of questions to ask on that intake form, and how many questions do you recommend asking?
I mean, I think it's anything you personally need to be set up for success or to be able to qualify them out. If you're a brand new venue and you have an open available calendar and you're just trying to get everybody in there, ask less questions and get them out there. Even if you have to qualify on the spot, it is what it is. But if you're kind of past that and you're in that 3 to 5 year, your calendar's pretty loaded up and they're looking for a time period that, you're not really 100% sure you have the availability, a few simple questions that asks them things like, is there a specific date or is your date flexible? I think that that's an easy question to say. Do you have a specific date? I think sometimes the venues put like a date drop down, that little calendar box where you're forcing them to choose a date, but you're forcing them into it instead of saying, do you have a specific date in mind? And are you flexible on a weekday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, if the price? So I think that would be one of the questions I'd suggest having. The other one would be for their Instagram handle. I think you can kind of get a feel for people that if someone gives you their Instagram handle on the, pre-tour booking form, if you go and request to follow them, I promise you they're going to accept it. They know they're coming to see you. They're not going to be like, oh no, I don't want her to see anything. I don't want them to see it. It allows you to give you a little bit of insight. It also allows you, if they leave that blank, to know they're either one, a little more private, or two, maybe they're not really Instagrammers. So if you refer to Instagram on that tour over and over again, you might not be talking to the right person.
Mm. And so when you request them on Instagram, do you ever send them like a DM or do any engagement with them after?
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm requesting them, so let's walk through the process. They book a tour on the form, they give me their Instagram handle. I go and request them, they accept it. Obviously, this requires someone monitoring it, but I'm going to send a DM saying, we're so excited to tour with you on Saturday at 10 o'clock. You'll receive automated emails or whatever. And we'll talk about that in a bit about, the confirmation process, but you've just now opened up a whole nother place to communicate. They might read it and not reply. They might heart it, but they might reply back being like, yeah, we can't wait to come. You've now opened a whole nother channel to be able to communicate with.
Yeah, and plus it guarantees that they see your Instagram as well, so they can, view your space, view your reels, and everything like that. So
Yeah, if they
that's a really
haven't
cool
been
step.
following you already, it's a great way to be like, you're getting them hyped up and getting them excited. Say, hey, go over and take a look at the highlight that says reviews and see what some of our, previous clients have said about us. Things like that you can get them all excited to warm them up.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And so besides, sending them a follow request, sending them a DM, what are some other ways that you can kind of warm the lead up or warm the prospect up before they actually step foot on your property?
I think that the most important part about the pre-warm up process is remembering that Gen Z doesn't really want to communicate. They don't really want to talk to you. They don't want to do a phone call with you in advance. They don't. Now, if you've got to qualify something on that form, that's a whole different ballgame. But there isn't really as much warming up to that process as there maybe used to be, or you could in a different sales format in terms of business, right? So I think remembering that your marketing's job, your website's job, the ads you're running's job is to warm them up. That by the point at which a couple is reaching out to you, you've already kind of done that. So following them on Instagram, scroll through a little bit. If there's like a few photos, don't go crazy like commenting or liking them all. You'll look like a crazy stalker. But if there's a picture of them getting engaged, like it, I think taking the time to do those little extra things makes such a huge difference when probably 95% of venues aren't.
So it's less about, calling the prospect and trying to make a connection that way. It's more about the little things, what your marketing looks like, what your website looks like following them on Instagram and letting them see all of your marketing, which is kind of designed to pre-qualify them before they show up?
Absolutely. I think the sales process has shifted so much to the marketing doing such a heavy job of the warm up and the pre qualification. Doesn't mean they're fully qualified, but people's time is so much more valuable. And yes, while the average couple is still going to see from 4 to 8 venues, like they're still going out to tour a good handful, they've done the job of narrowing down. And if you've marketed correctly, you've got better quality leads into your funnel.
Right. And it seems like couples are now kind of silently searching at this point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, they're silently searching before they're even engaged.
Right.
As someone who participates in wedding shows so many times, I'm having that conversation. Like, the best part about a wedding show, which is such old school marketing for some of the new venues out there, like, I can't believe she does that much of it. It's the only time I get face to face time, not talking to a couple in the DMs or, scrolling around or hoping they reply to an email or a text. There's so many of them there that they're not even really engaged technically yet. They're not, or they're engaged, but they're planning for 3 years from now, right? So it's really that, like, all of the behaviors you're doing in advance is warming them up.
Right. Interesting. So, do you send any reminders or use any kind of automation before the tour? And if so, what does your pre-tour follow-up sequence look like?
Absolutely. I think it's really important to remember to look at your experiences in life around you when you're looking at how do you run your business. So I don't know about you, but I had to go to the dentist last week and I made an appointment at the dentist. And the amount of emails and text messages and reminders and press Y to confirm and if you're not available, like, would I say it was borderline harassment? Yeah. Okay, it is what it is, right? The doctor's like, I want to make sure you're there because our time is valuable. That might be a little bit extreme as a venue. But sending one email, not writing that email in a way they actually reply, like not saying, please reply in bold, italics at the bottom, huge, please reply to confirm. Sending one email and hoping that's not going to do it anymore. So I suggest at the point at which, depending upon how far out you book the tour, right? So if you book the tour way out, 7 days out, send a reminder, 2 days out, send a reminder, one day before, send the reminder being like, it's tomorrow. All of them can have a different tone. We're so excited to see you tomorrow. I know you said you were coming, but sometimes circumstances change. Whether that's on email, text, it's wherever they've been responding to you. It could be in the DMs for all I care. It's wherever
Right.
you've been actively conversing with them. You want to make sure. If it is the day before and they have not yet confirmed, at that point, I would start texting them to be
Mm.
sure. So that's something, if you don't have a phone number that they can you can text, that's something I would put on that tour booking form to say what's the best number to text on event day just in case, on tour day just in case. So that way you have contact.
Right. Okay. So it's more dependent on the situation, dependent on all the information that you're gathering from them up front.
Mhm.
Um, okay. And so, how is a basic question, but how do you make sure they actually show up? How do you increase the show up rate?
I think it's remembering to be a person. We've done such a great job as a wedding community educating about sales and learning. We've forgotten the personal aspect of making them feel like they're coming to meet with a person and not with a building. And so remembering you're not just a building and an address, they're meeting with a team member. So when you're sending that confirmation, do you have an about page on your website that says, hey, we're so excited for you to meet with, Debbie, the sales manager. And here you can learn more about Debbie and link to the about page. Debbie's a person. Debbie's a mom. Debbie's got kids. Debbie recently got married. Like, make sure that they know that they're meeting with a person, not a building. So you're taking away the like, this is a big shopping experience. We're just this, whether you're a boutique brand or a big hotel, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they're meeting with that person. And so make sure that they're feeling connected to the human being, not just to you as a building.
Right. And so you have the automated messages go out, between 3 to 4 of them. Are you also sending like a personalized text in between that, a personalized DM, a voice note, a video? Are you doing anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I love me some voice notes and I'm a voice note junkie. And I think it's fantastic in Instagram, especially because it's a place and a space that if I'm in my Instagram account, I wouldn't be like, what is this? It's not always the easiest sometimes through a CRM or through Google Voice or any of that stuff to always whip off a voice note, but in Instagram it takes 2 seconds. So I think sending a photo, sending a voice note, sending things like that is also an amazing opportunity for you to look at that chance to be a human being. When they give you your Instagram and you follow them back, I get so much pushback from the venues about being like, I don't want to do business in the DMs. Well, welcome to 2025. This is where people are spending their time, especially the age group you're targeting. So you have to be where they're at. They're not reading emails.
Right. And so what's your take on sending your pricing and packages guide before the tour? Is that something that you're doing, or are you just kind of leading the prospects back to your website to where you maybe have it listed? What is your take on that?
Yeah, this is definitely another one of my soapboxes this year. So be prepared, William. Be prepared.
I'm
I think
prepared.
there's an epic mistake in between what would go into a pricing guide versus what goes into a tour packet. I think that the majority of venues in the world today have built one resource that is massive, huge, and comprehensive, and we're giving them way too much information in advance. So having a pricing guide, and over on Venue Help Desk in the tools, there's an entire toolkit on how to build a pricing guide. Building a simple 4 to 6 page pricing guide that really highlights what makes you different, makes the pricing really basic for them to understand. It's to motivate them to come take a tour. Then you can go into detail. It's got enough info in there for them to qualify themselves out for budget, but it's not so much information that they're not reading it before they get there. So if the only thing you're sending them is a 25-page PDF, well, no wonder why they're not reading it before they come. They 100% should have some form of pricing. If you've marketed correctly, though, there should be ranges or something on the website before they've even taken the next step. But just in case you're not doing that, at least have what you send them first be clear, concise, and condensed, easy to read on mobile. And so figure out that pricing packet first that goes. That should be what they're getting before a tour. On the tour, you can give them much more in-depth information.
Got it. Okay, so you send them the initial, and so you're saying the initial pricing packet is going to be different than the pricing guide?
Absolutely. That
And so,
packet is like, on a tour, you want them to leave with like the most detailed information. What is included in the menu is what is, but they don't need any of that before they're coming. They don't care what kind of chicken you offer to decide if I'm coming to tour, right? They don't care exactly every single type of linen option or whatever. All they want to know is it pretty? Does it match my vibe? Do I like it? Can it fit my guest count? How far away is it? And how much money does it cost? Like, what does it cost for me to come there? I need the basic who, what, when, where, before I choose to come see it. When you're there, now you can give me all the details because I want all my answers, all my questions answered to be able to make a decision.
and so what is the main, so it sounds like the pricing packet is it's a lot more brief, I would
Yes.
assume. So what is like another main difference between the pricing guide and just the pricing packet?
I think that the pricing guides, the intent is probably the biggest difference. The
Okay.
intent of the pricing guide, the pricing packet that they're getting on the front hand is for them to just show up for a tour. It's like dangling the carrot of, don't you want to come see this? Like, don't you want to come here and see more and learn more about us? And then when they're on the tour, you're answering all the questions, right? It's the thing that they're going to take away with them. It should have FAQs in it. And what are the next steps after the tour? And, answering much more detailed if you have multiple spaces, multiple places, all the options. That is what you would give them on a tour. So that pricing piece that you give them on the tour in that tour packet is much more detailed, and will have a lot more pages and detailed information in it, but it won't overwhelm them at that point though, because you've already talked through it with them and built rapport and a relationship on the tour.
Got it. So the pricing packet is just like a little sneak peek to get them really
Yes.
excited about the venue, to see some pictures, make sure it matches their vibe. And then the pricing guide is like really in depth, and that's what's really going to show them, what type of package that they need for their
Yep.
actual wedding.
Yeah, it's the
Okay.
detailing out of the packages and all of the inclusions. They don't always need all of that. And honestly, if someone is that detailed and type A, they will ask you for it. They will come to you and say, "Hey, this is great. I appreciate it. I'm just looking for a little more detail."
Right. That makes sense. Okay. So, are there any other pre-tour strategies that help conversion that we didn't really touch on here? I'm sure there are plenty, but
My God, there's so many. But um, one other thing that comes to mind, that I've already said it, but I'll say it again, is to figure out as a venue, as a company, really communicating with the next generation. And so, being in the places and spaces that they communicate, the quantity of email that we are all getting into our personal emails in between the ads and all the stuff you sign up for and whatever, the willingness to use text messaging on its own. I mean, I dream for Instagram DMs, but really the text messaging is such a game changing of being able to have that emotional conversation. When you talk about pre-qualifying, if the sales process has included texting, you've got that opportunity to do that. But sending someone an email saying, "Can you send me a link to your Pinterest board of your inspiration?" Like, it's not, they're not going to do it. Whereas if you're texting back and forth and having that short, fast, and dirty conversation, you're like, "Hey, send me one photo that you've fallen in love with." They've got that in a folder in their screenshot on their phone that they can text to you. So if you really are passionate about pre qualifying, a little bit and having that and warming up and that warm up process, I think it's not happening through email.
mm, yeah, it's quicker, it's easier, and I mean the open rates between
Oh,
text message
so
marketing
sexy.
and email are like it's not even close.
I mean, I don't even answer my mom's phone call unless she texts me first and tells me what she's looking for at this point, right? So, like,
There you
if
go.
you're busy, they're busy too. So, you've got to find the way to
Yeah.
get through.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, now let's talk about what happens during the actual tour itself. So let's start at the beginning. How should you open the tour? How should you start the tour when the bride and groom arrive?
I mean, I think the most common thing that happens, and when I work with venues and I ask them, when a tour comes in, do you off we go? Like, we get started and off we go, or do we sit and get to know? Do we take the time to sit down and have a conversation with them? And what I'll find is the majority of the time, the venues that are having lower conversion rates, they're not taking the time to have a conversation with them first. They're like, "I've got your info and off we go and let me start showing." And they start showing their venue like a real estate agent almost at an open house. They don't know anything about you at an open house. You walk in and they start showing and saying things without any knowledge of exactly what you as a consumer are looking for. And so I always highly recommend taking the time to sit down, spend 5 to 10 minutes, and get to know them a little bit more before you take off and make your moves.
Mm. So sit down, kind of observe what they're truly looking for before you actually get into the tour, and like you said, just start showing the property and just listing out all of the features and everything like that.
Yeah, it's that pre-qualification that I think venues are looking for them to do on the front side. They don't want to do it before they come out there now. That's like too much. Oh, you're gonna ask me questions I don't know, and it'll be on phone or on the Zoom, and it's more time committed. I'm just gonna come out there and do it. You can do it on the front end of the tour. It allows you to customize your tour. Let's stick with the like real estate example. When I was shopping for a house, I was on the hunt for that extra bedroom to have big, beautiful windows and a great wall. I could throw up a wall to be able to do videos, and it's my home office. And then I kept looking at houses, and they were like, "And this could be the kids' room." And I was like, "What are you people talking about?" When you don't take the time to sit down and have a conversation and get to know what that couple wants, you might say things like, "And this is our beautiful outdoor ceremony spot." You might have an indoor space and you don't realize that they didn't want to be outside. Even though 95% of your couples who come do, this couple didn't. So by taking the time to get to know what their wants and their needs are before you start walking around and showing it, allows you to tailor that tour a little bit more personal.
And this is kind of along the same lines, but how do you balance, like, what percentage should you be talking about, your features, what you guys have to offer, between asking them actual questions about their day and kind of, mirroring the sales pitch around that? Like, should the majority of the time, should you be asking them questions, or, how do you balance that?
Yeah, anything on the tour that you can say as a statement, you can flip it around and ask it as a question. And so rather than you pitching and pitching and pitching and pitching, right? It's so easy for you to walk up into a space and say, have you thought about having your ceremony outside? And then be like, I'm not really sure. Instead of saying, and this is where we do our outdoor ceremonies. So if you start to think about, really trying, they say it's the 80-20 rule. They should talk 80, you should talk 20. There's no chance in that. Like it's not anymore in today's world. These couples, they are not sure what they want. They don't really know how to answer the questions. So, but it should be 60-40. So if you can say it, you can ask it. So finding ways to think in your head, how do I ask this as a question instead of to figure out if they actually like that, right? If you walk into a reception space, you ask the question, have you thought about if you want a DJ or a band? Most of the venues I toured with my niece as she's getting married kept being like, and we put the DJ there, and we put the DJ there, and we put the DJ there, to the point where she thought she couldn't have a band at these spaces because no one ever asked if she wanted one because bands are expensive. And the majority of clients don't do it. But these two were spending, a quarter of their budget on the band. So you've got to figure out, instead of just saying it, how can you ask it?
That's incredible advice. So just reframing kind of the features of your venue, but as a question to ask the couple.
Yeah. I
That's
mean, we had this stunning courtyard that had this fountain in the middle of it. And we'd walk into the courtyard and all I would say is, do you hear that? And it was so awkward because I'd stand there silent until they replied and they were like, oh yeah. And it was the way the water trickles on the fountain. And they'd be like, oh, that's so nice. I'm like, this is such a calming area to do for cocktail hour. The excitement of the ceremony is there. Now everybody can just chill out, have drinks, relax. It's shaded, whatever. And they were like, oh, but I built that calming vibe by asking the question instead of being like, isn't the fountain pretty? No, it was pretty. They can see it in front of you, but you've got to use those features to build emotion and build the feel of what it's going to feel like to host their wedding there, not just what it looks like.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. So this might be kind of a loaded question, but can you try and walk us through your ideal tour from start to finish? Like, what does the entire process look like?
God, we could talk about that just for an hour. I think ultimately I like to always start with the sit and get to know, make sure I know who's on the tour with me. I can kind of strategically figure out who the decision makers are, who's got advice and input. I'm going to show them through the spaces, if possible in your layout. This isn't always possible, but if possible in your layout, I'm going to show them through the spaces on the flow of the day. So I want them to start, I want us to, even the start and sit to get to know sometimes is in the ready room. I want to flow them through what the flow of the day as their guests, they would experience, as their guests would experience. So it's not confusing as which space are we in next? We get ready and then we're in ceremony, then we're in cocktail, then we're in reception space and after party and the exit, and they kind of feel all the things. I want to flow them through the spaces, going over the things that are included, learning more about them, focusing on the benefits a little bit heavier than the features in terms of those conversations and setting the vibe. And then we're going to come back to sit down to talk through the packages, the pricing, the information. We're going to more or less have that sales pitch at the end, that conversation where I'm answering questions, I'm making sure, but I'm taking all that knowledge I've gained as we're walking and talking to kind of sit down in that space to figure out, to get them closer towards making an actual decision. And then they're done.
Okay. Got it. So you're walking them through the flow of the day, exactly how it would be structured on the day of their wedding. And then at the end, you're going to go through the pricing, the packages, the features, and that's kind of the sales pitch portion of the tour.
Yeah. And it's really that coming back to center, right? We kind of started by talking about what are you guys looking for? We've talked about all these things. Maybe your venue is one package. Maybe it's customizable. Maybe it's not. But ours was, and we had multiple packages. And I could sense on the tour all of a sudden, oh man, these people are really budget conscious, right? The budget is really important to them. Or man, they want the biggest, best package we've got. And so now at that point, I can take the knowledge I've gained to start guiding them through the next step of the process. It's not really about selling. It's about being that helpful guide, along the way. Most couples have never been married before, the majority of them. And so they're like lost little puppies and they need someone to take them, put them on the leash and take them through what they should do next and to help guide them along the way. And that's your role as the venue manager and the venue salesperson to guide them, because maybe you guide them towards the right package or maybe you guide them to say, we're not the right venue for you. Either way, you have to take them on that journey through the tour itself.
Got it. And so what do you do if you sense a couple is maybe a little bit hesitant, maybe they're holding back, or maybe, I don't know, they don't like what the venue has to offer, something like that. How do you make adjustments to that in real time?
I mean, I'm an extrovert, controversial, and I have no problem with confrontation. So we had the venue I worked at, we had three different spaces. One of them had what I would say is the ugliest carpet you have ever seen. So it was awful. And there's nothing I can do about it. The carpet is the carpet is the carpet, right? So if we walked into that space and it was like recoil, like they had been shot real quick sometimes. And I'd see the look on their face. And the ceremony space is stunning and the cocktail hours is beautiful overlooking the golf course. Then they walk in the ballroom and they're like, whoa. I'd say, listen, based on your reaction, it seems like this space, there might be some cons that you're not sure of. Do you want to talk about them? Because like, I don't want to spend the time. Yeah, I don't want to spend your time talking about it if this one's off your list. Because I had multiple spaces for them to pick from. But I think it's important when you see something, and if somebody who or they kind of go silent, it's okay to say, look, I mean, not if you're the owner, you can't get away with this. But if you're the employee listening to this, I'd say, look, I just work here. Like, this is just my job. I just want you to find the best venue that's the right fit for you. And if this isn't it, it's okay. We don't have to continue touring. My tours run 90 minutes. Like, we do not have to continue touring. And so I think it's all about building rapport. And when you take that time to sit down with them on the front side, you've bonded with them, you've built that rapport that you can have that conversation. But you have to be paying attention. If you're just word vomiting everywhere you go the way you always tour and say the same thing every time, you're missing the cues that they're not loving it or that there's hesitation. You've kept going when they took the breath about something you said. You've got to listen to them and take those cues, but don't be afraid to talk about it at that moment. Don't pretend like it didn't happen. Talk about it.
So listen, take cues, and just be honest, and don't be afraid to talk about whatever they're hesitant on.
Yeah, I mean, they're really just looking for you to guide them. Like, they don't know what they don't know. And especially when they come out without a parent, without a planner, without a friend helping them in the process, they need you to kind of be that role for them to say, like, it's okay. Like, not every venue is going to be the right fit for you. But if you set that up right when you sit down and talk to them, then it's a little easier to kind of go over it later.
And so what are some other ways that you can build rapport that aren't conversational? Like, are you bringing out champagne for them? Are you bringing out any little gifts to kind of warm them up when they arrive?
Yeah, I think people always like something that feels personal, right? So I think whatever you can do to welcome them on the way in. Do you have a sign? Do you have a TV in the space where they come in that you can put their names on it? How can you personalize that experience, as they're coming in? I'm all about give me the cocktail and the champagne all day long. Just be very careful with that being the only option. So I think I'm in Florida, it's hot here. If you're touring people June, July, August, walk in and hand them a bottle of water and then say, would you like champagne? You can do water in a cute koozie with your name on it, like your venue logo on it. You can do things like that, but ultimately think about how do I give that level of service and that experience that shows them that we're paying attention and we care, whether it's water, champagne, if you have a signature drink. Ian, who's been on the pod before, at his venue at Madeira, they have a house sangria. They always offer that to people, when they come for a tour. Just be careful about only offering alcohol and not having a non-alcoholic version, because that turns off people sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure. But also on top of that, just making it a little more personal than just alcohol. Like you said, having their name on the TV, maybe a little card with their name on it.
Yeah.
Just something that personalizes the process before they get started. Awesome. All right, so let's dig into the post-tour follow-up and how to actually close the booking. So, what is your go-to follow-up strategy after a tour ends? How quickly do you reach back out, and with what type of messaging?
14 questions in one. I'm here for it. Okay, so I think the challenge is when you come back to the table to talk to them, it's really about how are you finishing the tour. The post-tour strategy starts with that conversation at the table. And so making sure that you're clear about what the next steps are as to what you'll be doing is key. Some venues, I was at a venue that was venue food and beverage. So we sent them a personal proposal. We sent them something where they could see the numbers with their guest count, things like that. If you're venue only and you just rent space at a flat rate, they might not need a proposal, but doesn't a proposal feel fancy and feel personal? Because it would have my names on it. It would maybe have, the date we talked about. It would give a timeline maybe for that date. So I think I'm a firm believer in sending something that feels personalized, not just here's the package we talked about. Even if it's a one-page proposal that has their info on it. We were always really adamant about a sample timeline. I'll die on the hill, but depending upon what time if you're getting married in January, your ceremony's at 4 o'clock outside. Non-negotiable, it's at 4. I need you to know that. So we put it on the proposal because I'm also going to put it on your contract, right? So I think having that thing that you're going to send them that takes all this information you've given them and you've given them this huge packet of all this stuff and slims it down. So I think that that's the best to say, hey, listen, I'm going to take all of this, sum it all up. I know this was a ton of information. I'm going to put all this into, a personal proposal. And then I'm going to take anything we talked about that feels personal. My fiance's from Ohio and we love Buckeyes, like whatever that is. And I'm going to try to weave some of that into the proposal so they know I was listening. But I think that that's the strongest follow-up, saying I'll send that over within 24, 48, by Monday, whenever you're going to send it. I need you to reply back, even if it's 2 words, and just say, got it. I need to know that it made it through the spam filters, that you've seen that it landed in your inbox. Doesn't mean you're going to make a decision on Monday. But I think that that's something that I want to know you've received it. And if you've got open communication in other places and spaces like text messaging and in the DMs, if they kind of don't respond back at that, you can give it a few days and poke it again.
Gotcha. And so, how many, if they do not respond to that initial email, how many times are you following up and when do you stop?
I mean, I'm a proper salesperson, so I follow up until you tell me no. But I do tell them that at the end of the tour, that I know that this is a process. I also knew that my venue, we toured on the weekends. We had open availability. I didn't service weddings. I only sold them. I did all the marketing and sales. So my tour availability, we toured faster than anybody. I could get them in quicker than anybody else could. I could do 5 tours on a Saturday. We cranked. So I knew that there was a strong chance that that I was the first tour. I mean, probably 8 out of 10 times I was the first tour. So I made it that conversation was, it's really important for us to have open lines of communication. You're going to go see other places and spaces, but we've got to keep the conversation going. And I'm the expert in this space. You're not. So if you get a proposal from somewhere else and you're like, wait, I think, or the number looks lower, let me know and we can compare them together. Such a dirty tax, but it worked every time. Because if you built rapport right and they feel comfortable with you, they would send me someone else's proposal and say, hey, Shannon, this looks like it might be a better deal. And I looked through it and I'd see all the stuff that wasn't apples to apples. And it doesn't mean it wasn't a better deal, but it didn't include the same things. And sometimes I could customize to get to an even better price than that. But I included all the stuff they asked for. But I'm a follow up until they say no. I'm going to
And
I used to joke and be like, I will call you, email you, text you, DM you, show up at your job. At some point when you picked a venue, just tell me. This is my job. The way you have a job, this is my job. So I want you to find the best venue that there is.
got it. So you're kind of positioning yourself as more than just a venue, but the expert that you can go to if you have any questions about the process.
Yeah, really about the choosing a venue process. I'm not trying to be their wedding planner. I never was, but it was that venue choosing selection process that in many markets, the large percentage of couples are choosing a venue before they choose a planner. Of course, we all hope they hire a planner, but most of them are not hiring the planner first. They're doing that venue selection process on their own and they need that guide.
Got it. And so on average, I know this will probably vary depending on the venue and the situation, but on average, how long does it take after the tour for the couple to close?
Yeah, it has definitely elongated drastically. I mean,
Mm,
it elongated a little bit post pandemic, but it has gotten much bigger. I just spent 5 days in New Orleans with my stepkids and their significant others. Two couples, both in their 20s, one currently engaged, one about to get engaged. I could teach a freaking class to the wedding industry about the things I learned about 20-year-olds in that five day window. And one of them was the decision making capabilities. It's very challenging. They take a really long time to decide. They get very overwhelmed and then they just stop talking. This is as much as us. What restaurant do we want to go to? Sometimes menus that were too complicated. So I think that the venues in today's world, a lot of them are giving up too quickly. That they're saying, they're not asking the questions, how many other tour venues are you touring? What's your decision date? Like, when are you guys trying to make a decision by? Right? My stepkids are getting married. I mean, Jay and Haley are happy as a clam, and they're starting to gather data and pricing. Now they're not going to tour because they have me controlling that. But if they didn't have me in the industry, they'd be out touring. They're not getting married until like fall 2027.
right.
But they'd be starting to look because they're trying to figure out the cost and their budget. So
Right.
I think it's like, just make sure that realizing if you haven't asked the questions, start to get those questions into your tour. When are you trying to make a decision by? What does your decision making process look like? How many tour venues are you still going to tour? Because they might say they might say, oh, we're trying to make a decision within the next 3 months. Well, now your follow up, the chase is on a little bit longer than it would have been if they're like, oh, we're trying to make a decision in the next 2 weeks. But you've got
Mm,
to ask better questions to get better output for you to do your job the best you can.
got it. So it's understanding the situation of that specific bride or groom
Hmm.
before you continue to follow up them for however long.
Yeah, you just can't give up. Like, at some point, hopefully I mean, you can automate it at some point. Start with the
Yeah.
personal reach out. At some point, you can automate it. But I think, it's important to not give up, but you need situational information to make better judgment calls.
Got it. And so let's say that you have a tour, 2 weeks ago, and you haven't heard back, or maybe they responded to the initial email, but you haven't heard anything back since. Like, how often are you following up with them, and what type of messaging are you putting into the follow-ups?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always about medium first. Like, can you spread it out? So it's not always by email. Sometimes it's an email, sometimes it's a text. If I've heard back from them and we had been texting, I'd probably send the text saying, "Hey, how's the venue touring going? Do you have any questions about anything? How's the process been so far? Like, what's the next venue you're going to tour?" Because in a text, you can do that like one sentence, hit send. So, I try to open the door to start having just kick up a conversation again in a more relaxed place and space that might be over an Instagram. The best part about following them on Instagram is you can also go back and double check things, because maybe now they're on vacation in Italy for 2 weeks and you're like, oh, look at that. They're not even here right now, right? Life gets in the way sometimes. So I think realizing that, like, every few, I'd probably give it a few days before I checked in to see, but it's asking the right question next. But you don't want it to go too long. You don't want them to forget about you, right? So if I haven't heard from them, it's probably every 4 to 5 days I'm kind of poking in with different tools. Hey, check out this reel we just made on Instagram, or like send them other things. Here's a question somebody asked me on a tour yesterday that no one's ever asked before. Maybe you had this question too. Like, how can you think outside the box in those follow ups to stay top of mind while they're still considering your venue?
So doing more than just like asking questions about them, but actually trying to provide value in the messages that you're sending.
Absolutely. The same thing you should be doing in all of your marketing leading up to it to get people to want to tour. You should continue that process, right? Whether you're paying for ads online that give them digital downloads and things like that, what your chase of your email follow up on the lead side looks like, that continuous added value, you want to continue that after the process. Don't just, they came to tour and now you're not chasing them as hard. Those are the ones you should be chasing the hardest.
Mm. And so, how are you using automation within that post-tour process?
Yeah, I think you have to be really careful with automation. Automation is a fantastic tool at the point which you're like, I quit. Because if you miss a step, you lose so much trust post tour. You've done all this work, you've built all this rapport with them, and then she emails you back on a Saturday that says, hey, oh, we're so excited to move forward. And then you have an automation that goes on Sunday that says, I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, you have to be so careful. So I think the lines of, give yourself a window of whatever your cadence is, whether you follow up for 3 weeks of manual touches and then you dump them into an automation, but just be really careful. You also know like what's people vibe at the end of the tour. Sometimes I was like, oh, they're hot. Sometimes I'm like, they're warm. And sometimes I'm like, I don't think they liked it at all. I'm going to not chase them. I temperature check them. I might put that one into an automation faster. I'll follow up a few times, check in, but then be like, I might do if we're not the right fit, just tell me email quicker than I would have on the other ones. But so, I mean, I love automation. I'm an automation junkie where I can. You just have to be really careful in the sales process because you lose trust when an automation hits when you weren't expecting it.
So make sure to turn on that like stop on response button
Yes.
on your automation.
Unfortunately, a lot of the CRMs that most and many wedding venues use don't have that function. And so that's the problem is the automations they're building, they just send either way. But if you have that stop on response, God willing, please use it.
Put it on.
Or build the automation where it's like manual, you have to push the button. Like it's all in a sequence. The sequence is built, but it doesn't send without you pushing, hitting that push. And just like be careful on that automation that, you've got that opportunity to stop it if you can, if your CRM really allows that.
Right. Okay, so this might be kind of a hard one to answer, but if you could only do one or two things in the post-tour follow-up, like one email, one message that really moves the needle, what would that be?
I had an email that when people truly ghosted me, like came to tour, they were in my warm or hot lead list, like that I really thought they were going to. I had an email template that if you have listened this far in the episode, don't give them this one over on Instagram. If you have listened this far, you get this bonus. We had this email template and the subject line just said, "We believe." And the email literally was like, "We believe that if you're getting married at venue X," and then it was like 4 bullet points because we were a family owned venue. I would say things like, "We believe, when you get married here, you become part of our family for life. We believe that every wedding should be a 3-day wedding weekend," because we're a resort, not a 5-hour party. We hit all these like pain points, but it was really like the core values that our company felt about weddings. We would put in that email. And I'd say, I know that you are in this tough spot of trying to choose a venue and make those choices. And it's so overwhelming, but like, we're here to help and support, and it really it had a conversion question at the bottom. I wish I remembered what it was. I'd have to go dig it out, but it had a question to get them to respond. It was so outside the box they were like, oh my, it was like an immediate feel like we care that
Right.
it really just kind of changed the game from, I'm just chasing you to get the contract into the really sharing our values as a wedding venue. And so I think that was, if it was the best email I had in my arsenal, I would pull that one out and I'd pull it out and shoot out the big guns and they'd say, okay, all right, I'd reply. Cause then it caused movement, which was the most important piece.
And so last one to wrap up this section, but how do you handle follow-ups when, a couple's interested, but they're not saying no, like they're kind of on the fence? How do you push them to that conversion?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always the opportunity to schedule a follow-up call where we can go through whatever the steps are. I used to love to use Loom and things like that to talk them through a proposal, right? Or talk them through a sample contract. I would send over maybe a blank sample contract we use and say, maybe you're not ready for this yet. I know you haven't asked me for the contract, but if you wanted to just take a look at it to see what the next step looks like, let me send that over. And I always like did it attached to a video where I could kind of walk through and explain the sections, because when they see force majeure and they're like, I don't know what any of these words mean, we would just kind of casually, it wasn't their contract, it was just a contract. And so I would almost just guide them into the next steps of, well, for the I just need a final choice of date. You, depending upon your venue and your situation, you can do things like do date holds, like 24 hours, 72-hour holds on dates. Like there's a lot of different ways you can kind of, if you're finding that they're not making moves. But I think it's just important to kind of just start pushing it forward softly, not being like, make a decision or don't. But I'm sensing the frustration of the venues right now because today's couples, they're not fast deciders. And after 5 days with 20-year-olds, I'm like, oh, this isn't just in wedding planning, it's in life. They don't like to make decisions quick. And so because they're used to the world at their fingertips. And so that's why everything is pushing last minute with weddings in general. And it's frustrating for all of us in the industry.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a great episode. Can you tell us a little bit more about Venue Help Desk and how people can get in touch with you?
Absolutely. Venue Help Desk, we live on all the platforms and all of the spaces. We're also launching a podcast this year called the Venue Helpline, and it's kind of like a call-in show. So if you head over to venuehelpdesk.com/the Venue Helpline, you can either call in, the phone number's there, and you can leave your venue gripes and we'll help you with them, or you can type them in anonymously. But in general, you can find ready-made tools, resources. We do monthly free education called the Power Hours, where we bring in helpers, and we've got all these videos. And there's a great Facebook group over on Facebook that you can find on everything. It's Venue Help Desk on everything. But head over there, and there's content and learning everywhere to be found, and lots of tools and resources that really can just solve your problems quickly over on the website.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us, and make sure to check out Venue Help Desk if you are listening. And thank you everyone for listening. Bye-bye.